There was a story that has been on the Drudge Report for most of the night. I haven't looked in the last hour, but it was still up there earlier this morning. And it was the lead on Drudge for a long time. It's a link to the New York Times. And it says that Democrats are backing away from the word impeachment. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But I'll tell you, it's likely what's going to happen as they realize that they may have, well, there's no there. It's 7 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 47. Couple of things we're going to be doing this morning at 8:30. We're going to be joined by my friend Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil, retired from the U.S. Air Force, formerly with the Thunderbirds, as well as with the Reagan administration, and he worked as well for the first President Bush. If you didn't know it, Steve was actually a friend of Roger Ailes. They both were graduates of Ohio University and had been on campus at one time together for a period of couple of years and got to know each other even better years later. He's going to reflect on a story that Roger Ailes told him that he always found to be quite funny. That'll be coming up a little later in the program. Also, after 9 o'clock news this morning, Todd Eccles. Todd is with Patriot Defense. And he's actually got a course coming up tomorrow for those people who are looking to get that concealed carry permit so that you can actually take it with you to Utah, Nevada, Montana, Wyoming as part of reciprocity. This is the way you can go about doing that. And all things really firearms. We'll be talking about that in the next hour. So if you've got a question or comment, please feel free to join us. The New York Times, according to the Times, Democrats have decided that maybe the word impeachment is a little too strong. You know what's going on here? After all of the drumbeat they've been doing, they've never been happy with Trump being elected president. And this started even before the election, and then they were shocked when he was elected. They'll do anything to remove him from office. They're being pressured by the extremists in their party. The people media generally ignores. If you were a Tea Partier and you went politely to a rally and then went back home, you'd read in the paper the next day that you were a scurrilous racist. If you're a leftist extremist, part of this group that's called Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist, and you go out and smash windows, loot stores, and burn things, you're called an oppressed individual. These are the people who are pressuring their leaders in Washington to go after Trump by any means necessary. The problem is the Democrats quietly, and the Times doesn't mention this in its story, go figure. Somebody at the Times decided that should be admitted. The omission is the Democrats poll tested impeachment over the last several days. And what they discovered is a great many Americans, especially people living in their own districts, are fed up. And they're fed up with the Democrats trying to be opportunists here. And when the poll is coming back with answers that say, got a better idea, why don't you swing Chuck Schumer from a lamppost? Now, that wasn't a question, and that probably wasn't an answer, but they're starting to realize that there are a lot of people out in this country who don't live in the Washington Beltway and who don't work in mainstream media or Hollywood, who don't particularly appreciate what's been going on here, especially when so many of these liberals admit openly that there's no evidence of anything here that could get the president impeached. So now the Democrats are caught between a rock and a hard place, plus Mr. Mueller, who's now going to be looking into this, conducting his independent investigation. Mr. Mueller has such a wide net, he may catch Democrats as well. Oops. Hemina. So they've got to deal with all of that. And you're going to see this start to recede. They just thought they could continue to make a lot of noise about it for another 18 months. And come election day next year, that they would pick up a few seats in the House and Senate because they would continue to paint Donald Trump as being a Russian agent. But now with this investigation, which as we know could stretch on for years and it might not benefit Trump, but let's say 6 months to a year from now, Mr. Mueller has found nothing. But let's say he finds instead that the Clinton Family Crime Foundation was hoovering up money from Russian oligarchs, which didn't necessarily go into the campaign coffers, but was used to promote Clinton Inc., then that's going to be very embarrassing. Or what if they discover that Chuck Schumer and the DNC were beneficiaries of some Russian oligarchs? because it could be very possible. Schumer, who hoovers up most of his campaign money from Wall Street, he could, by the way, have some connections there that go back to Russia as well, because Russian oligarchs invest their money in a lot of places as well. I'm just telling you, the tentacles from this could stretch far beyond the White House and ensnare a lot of the worst abusers of this story who are serving on Capitol Hill. 12 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I was listening to, the blabbermouth from California, Maxine Waters. I saw a clip this morning. She was speaking on MSDNC's Morning Joe. This is a little bit long, but once again, you've got this woman who's been screaming impeachment now for the last few months. She's not the most wholly articulate person you'll ever come across. She has, however, been screaming about impeachment, but she continually admits there's no evidence, but says, don't worry, they'll end up creating it. As I say, this is about $1.50 in length, but take a listen.
I really do believe that much of what you saw coming out of Trump's mouth was a play from Putin's playbook. I think that when you saw him absolutely calling Hillary crooked, the lock her up, all of that was developed. I think that was developed strategically with people from the Kremlin, with Putin, and I think it's more than bank records. I think that you can see that visits, to Moscow were made during the campaign by Manafort and others. I think it's a lot more absolute.
So you think the Russian government developed the talking points for the Trump campaign?
I think that there was a cooperation in developing strategy about how they could ensure that Hillary Clinton was not elected. They need Trump. Trump will be there to support lifting those sanctions. That's what they really want to happen. They want to drill in the Arctic. Tillerson has negotiated a multi-billion-dollar deal with Exxon to do that drilling. They can't get the equipment, the supplies, and all that they need until the sanctions are lifted. They want Trump. Not only will he support lifting those sanctions, he also will turn a blind eye to the expansion that Putin is trying to do. He does not care about them having invaded Crimea, and he does not care whether or not this egotistical maniac Putin is attempting to reunite the whole Soviet
I know we need to go
Union.
soon, but just to be clear, there has been no actual evidence yet.
No, it has not been.
Okay. I just want
No,
to
it has not.
clear.
And I want you to know, every time I've talked about impeachment, I've said we've got to connect the dots, we've got to get the facts, we've got to do the investigation. That is what leads to impeachment. And I also said that Trump will lead us right there.
She references drilling in the Arctic, but she leads you to believe that they're going to be drilling in the Russian Arctic. So therefore, we need to lift the sanctions. But as it turns out, this would be the lifting of the regulations on drilling at Anwar, which is in Alaska, which is our part of the Arctic. But you see, nobody at that MSDNC panel called her out on that. As I've said before, she was a lot more harmless when she was working in her television days on Sanford and Son.
And I could have called you frog-eyed, fish-eating fool, but I didn't.
Thank you, Aunt Esther. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number for reaching our show. I'll get that out. Our show today. You realize this allergy season has suddenly kicked up now that the weather's gotten a little bit warmer and all that rain we've had. I got up this morning, and I'll tell you what, I spent the first half hour once I got out of bed sneezing. And then I went through a sneezing jag about 45 minutes ago while I was at my desk. And the tickle in my throat, which is frequently there, is a little bit worse today, but I'll get through it. We'll plow through it. 736-0300, the telephone number for reaching our show today. 736-0300. We're at 47, on our way, close to 70 today. It feels great outside. If you haven't been out there yet, if you can go out and just stand in it for a few minutes, you'll find it's very, very relaxing. And a bit of an escape from all of the baloney that's going on around the world. The bombardment of news lately has been, I don't care if you're a liberal or a Republican, it's a little bit strenuous. Ben Stein, who has a home in Sandpoint, formerly worked in the Nixon White House. Ben Stein, who had a game show as well. I used to love to watch that, Win Ben Stein's Money. And he's writing a column in The Spectator. and he agrees with Donald Trump that it is a witch hunt. This one is a real witch hunt because there is no evidence at all of any kind whatsoever that there was any collusion with the Russians by Trump. There is no evidence that the Russians controlled Trump or anyone in his campaign. Let me give you a little sidebar to that. I was watching television yesterday afternoon, and a bulletin broke. Reuters says there were 18 contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. Well, political campaigns, especially those for the presidency of the United States, consult greatly with foreign governments. Russia, China, England, France, Germany, Italy, just to name a few. So all of this breathless, again, they omit the parts of the story that would be important for you to know so you would understand the context. But the idea is 18 times. Oh, we see what's going on here. Well, they might have 25 times talked to Angela Merkel in Germany. They might have been on the horn frequently with the Conservative Party in England. They certainly were talking a lot with the folks in the United Kingdom Independent Party and Nigel Farage, who's the leader of that. In fact, Farage came and campaigned with Mr. Trump. So once again, there are no laws broken here by talking to people in other governments and in other countries. And if you're running for office, you're trying to get a little feedback too. Just like you get feedback from voters, you get feedback from business owners, you get feedback from just anybody you can. But it's important for your campaign. Let me get back to Stein. He writes it's all about a fantasy. So now we have a hunt for something that is non-existent. The issue was made incredibly clear inadvertently by Bob Beckel on Fox News Wednesday night. Stein writes, Beckel was talking about the need for a special prosecutor. One of the sane people on the panel said something like, but there's no evidence anything wrong was done. Beckel, who says he's sober now, answered something like, that's why we need an investigation. Again, for what? Nothing there, nothing to see here. Relax, members of the Trump resistance, Stein writes. Relax, friends of Hillary. You were right. There was a mistake in the election. The Democrats did win after all. Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein just handed it to them in a TKO. That means technical knockout. It didn't even take 4 months or a single crime. Nice work, media. You've shown those little voters who's boss. They're trying to take it away from you. It's not just taking it away from Donald Trump. They're trying to take it away from you. The deep state is at work here in collusion. That's the real collusion with media, with Washington elites, with Hollywood elites, with Democrats, so they can continue taking us absolutely down the wrong road, the road we've been on in this country for so long that is destroying us with $20 trillion in debt. Also, they can go in and grown men can use the little girl's lavatory. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil joins us in about 15 minutes. Also, coming up after 9 o'clock news this morning, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. We're at 48 on Top Story. We're heading for some much warmer temperatures next week. Middle 80s by the middle of the week. And looking forward to that. And there's not really any, last week though, I sat down, one day I said, there's no rain in sight. By the time I got home, the forecast had changed and it said rain, and it rained. It rained that night and it rained the next day. But again, they also tell you that global warming is coming. But no, we're looking at a really nice stretch of weather, sunny and warm over the next several days. And just a quick point, weather is a service of Mountain Home Auto Ranch in Mountain Home. Also, if you're going to be turning on that air conditioner, before it gets really hot, fire it up now. Find out if it's actually working and if it's in tip-top shape. If not, the pros from Ramsey Heating and Electric will come out and they'll get the job done. They'll get it done right. They'll get it done right the first time. Ramsey Heating and Electric is located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number is 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Telephone number for reaching our program today, 736-0300. 736-0300. You're listening to Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I've called you a few times the last month or so, and I kind of got my eyes opened up yesterday to the Democrats. Maybe they're not as bad as what we think. I had a lady catch me at a coffee shop. She recognized my voice. And she said, "You're the guy that's on the radio. It's always hammering on the liberals and the Democrats." I said, "Well, no, I'm not hammering on them." I said, just giving my opinion, and that's that. Anyway, she went to telling me how Democrats aren't that bad. Well, I got a hotel room last night. I was out trying to make money to help pay her welfare bills and with my taxes, and I got to thinking about it. I'll bet you if Trump would have got caught with all the top secret stuff in an unsecured server, and Anthony Weiner wouldn't have had some of the top secret stuff in his computer that Hillary had sent his wife, I'll bet you if Trump had got caught with that, the Democrats probably would have backed him up and said, no, this ain't right. This is not right. You guys can't be attacking Trump like this because he's such a great guy. See, they're trying to make us think they always do what's right. They always want what's right. They'd have never backed Trump up. They wouldn't have. For the exact same crime or computer situation, they'd have never backed him up. But these people want everybody to think these Democrats are looking out for us. Bull crap. They're trying to take away the guy we voted in. They're trying to take away the person that the majority of the states wanted.
It is about politics.
He won the popular, but he won most of it in California. She got it in California.
Right. She can be president of California for all she likes. I wouldn't care.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. But it just drives me nuts how these people, they're so blinded thinking the Democrats are doing nothing but trying to help this country and save this country. This is self-serving, folks. They give a damn about our freedoms. They don't give a damn about the Second Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. They don't care about that stuff. They want their power, and they would try to take away Trump through impeachment if they thought they could do it. There's not a question in my mind. That nut you had on, I can't remember, the gal had the tape on a few minutes ago, about a minute and a half tape.
Oh, Maxine Waters.
Maxine Waters, thank you. There's the prime example. That is a liberal at its finest, right there. But anyway, Bill, hey, I appreciate you letting me get on your show every now and then. You got a great show. Thank you.
I thank you, and you add to it. So that's a good note to point out too as well. 826, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. 49 right now. Camille Paglia, who's a longtime liberal, and she has been writing lately, she broke with the liberals after Bill Clinton, saying, you're defending him after all of this rotten behavior around women and the rotten way he treated his wife, and yet you defend him because, well, he's a fellow traveler. So then it became all right. And so, yes, this is all just about trying to remove a guy from the White House they don't like. I thought Limbaugh made it perfectly clear the other day on his program. I was sitting here doing some editing after the show, and I heard him point out, he said, do liberals really believe that if Trump were to be pulled out of office, had to leave office, that he was either fired by, after a trial in the Senate or the like, that Hillary Clinton would become president? Not going to happen. In fact, Mike Pence, who's a very conservative Christian, would come along. He may not like what he does after he's far more conservative than Donald Trump ever has been. You look forward to that? Are you telling me that? And so your girl isn't coming back. She's a two-time loser. She's going to be 148 years old come 2020. It's not going to get a whole lot better. And if you think she's falling down and having seizures now, well, give it a few more years. My guess is her health isn't going to get a whole lot better over that course. And Democrats complaining that we're not all that bad. Look, I understand. I think that the Democrats in Idaho, for the most part, I agree with Matt Erpelding, what he said. He's the minority leader in the State House of Representatives. When he said it on air a couple of weeks back, talking with us, that the National Party, the people in the Beltway especially, have given the party a bad name in places like Idaho. They are a far more centrist party. Michelle Stennett is a far more centrist candidate than some of the flaming liberals you see currently serving in the House of Representatives in Washington or in the U.S. Senate. I understand that. Sally Boynton Brown, who put her foot in her mouth when she was campaigning to be the next DNC chair, who was representing Democrats in this state, she's now taken a job in Florida. I have the impression that probably someone said, Sally, you don't really fit the program here. And so she's gone. However, the fact of the matter is, over the years, there has still been a strain of that party in this state that has tried to turn this into, Southern California, or turn it into the Beltway in Washington, or turn it into New York City. with a lot of the notion that everybody here has to accept their sexual mores and some of their other, call them, I don't know, perfidious ideas. The fact that we're supposed to accept that, they don't seem to realize culturally it's not going to fly here. And if they don't like it, that's the beauty of this country. You can always pack up and leave and go to some high tax environment where they agree with you. Short break on the way. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil is going to join us in just a couple of minutes on Top Story. I do want to remind you there are many choices available for people who have hearing health issues. And I hope you get your hearing taken care of because I want you here with me every day. We recommend you should choose Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. Why would you do it? Experience. Dr. Christine Pickup is a certified audiologist with 17 years serving the hearing impaired of all ages. True diagnostic testing will help you know what the causes of your hearing loss happen to be and will lead to the best treatment options. Call Mount Harrison Audiology today for an appointment. 208-312-0957, 312-0957. I will mention the show Tuesday. We're very much looking forward to it here. And then the first hour of the program, likely next Friday, because we're going into Memorial Day weekend, is going to be dedicated as well to the those who gave that last full measure of devotion. When I was a kid, as it turned out, I think Memorial Day was the one holiday I enjoyed the most. Just to see people walking around with the poppies. And after the parade in my hometown, there'd be that solemn ceremony at the cemetery. Rain or shine, there'd be a ceremony there. And I've never forgotten the chill when that parade would start. People would be lined up along the street, and there'd be that buzz of chatter that you hear when people are gathered like that in a crowd. And then all of a sudden, the color guard would appear from around the corner. And these would be men from the VFW and the American Legion. And years later, I think the AMVETS Club became involved too. And you would see them round that corner, and they'd have the polished helmets and the flags. And suddenly the whole crowd on both sides of the street would go silent. I don't even recall hearing babies crying. And then you'd hear the clicking of the heels as they marched down the street. And in that silence. And then you'd hear someone calling out cadence. And that would be all you would hear on that still morning. And to this day, I find it to be one of the most beautiful things to witness in my lifetime. And I think a lot of you probably feel the same way. I went to the ceremony last year in Buell at the cemetery and found it to be very much the same experience. I'm surprised that there are so few of these, though, ceremonies in southern Idaho. The other thing I wanted to mention, the field of heroes, which takes place over in Pocatello or in that area. One of the folks who actually works on that project, she's going to join us on the show Tuesday to explain all of the details of that. I didn't get to see it last year or the year before, but my goal is to get out there to see that as well. 8:45, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I do want to remind folks who are tuning in today, a lot of you are like me. You're on that. I never really gave retirement a whole heck of a lot of thinking until just the last couple of weeks. And I happened to see a couple of places where I was driving and thinking about when I get to retirement, how am I going to live? That is, I want to be near a doctor's office. I want to be near a hospital for obvious reasons, but I want to be near some shops and some restaurants, and I want that convenience. But in order to get those things, you have to have a plan. And if you're looking for someone to work with you on that plan, you've got to get in touch with the folks at Waddell & Reed. They've been doing this since 1937. Waddell & Reed is one of the oldest firms to offer mutual funds. And in fact, Waddell & Reed owns and manages 2 mutual fund families, investing by a conservative nature. Do they know what they're doing? That question will come up from time to time. Of course, they've been in business now 8 decades. In fact, they'll be going into decade number 9 here shortly. They will take a planning approach because they know that each and every one of you is an individual with different needs and goals, and they'll try to do that so that they can help you fill the pieces of that pie. And they'll build that plan obviously with you in mind, and Waddell and Reed will help you manage the money, and Waddell and Reed takes planning personally. It's coming up on 8:47 now, and a couple of other quick notes. We were talking in the last half hour about, well, what the Democrats have been calling a scandal or the crime of the new century, and we were telling you that as well. A lot of Democrats are now backing away from calls for impeachment as they're starting to realize that this challenge to Donald Trump may not work out in their favor. Trump could come out of this looking stronger. The other day I was watching a TV newscast. I'll tell you, the language of television news, nothing has changed. It's the same tired language I heard 50 years ago when I was a little boy. Things here in Twin Falls will never be the same again. A fun time was had by all. Well, I'm exaggerating those. But on the other hand, people are saying, well, because of this, Mr. Trump may be unable to get his agenda done and the White House distraction. Who says anyone's distracted? Raul Labrador made a good point on this show a couple of days ago. He said, well, we're going to continue to go ahead and work legislation. Actually, it may give some cover for Congress on some of these issues or the repeal of various regulations. So why is, but media, so the end of Donald Trump, distraction, nothing will get done, his agenda will slow. Well, I know that you repeat these things over and over and over again, but why is that so? We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX. Well, pretty close. You were almost on KLIX. We'll try another caller. News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and you're on Top Story.
Good morning, Bill. I woke up this morning with a sore throat, so hope I can get my point across here. Them arrogant buggers on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, their only job they're after right now, they want to get rid of Trump. That's their whole mission right now, and I hope we remember this in 18 and get rid of 90% of them. They want to destroy him because they're not working for us anymore, and it's so apparent, and I just hope he stays the course, and if they do anything with him, it's not stopping. He's just a hood ornament for us, and we're going to come forward. Thanks, mister.
Hey, thank you. Agreed. If Donald Trump moves on, I've read several people who've said what is called Trumpism by folks in the media will continue. Those people who went out and voted for him, 60 million of them aren't going away. And we remember just a few weeks ago, there was a poll taken that said, well, if the election were a do-over today, he'd actually win the popular vote too. Which means more and more Americans are seeing the light on all of this. 8:49. Another reason that the Democrats are trying to hammer at this is because they were trying to distract you and hope that they could break you away from Donald Trump. But their message any longer. Again, I go back to when he would look at Jeb Bush and say, low energy. People would laugh because it made sense. People are so, all of in politics is always like, oh, the distinguished gentleman next to me, even though he's a no good stinking dog. But I want to say with all due respect, Donald Trump was the first person who says, hey, this guy's a joke. And people knew that guy was a joke. And they know that a lot of politics is simply a laughing matter. He pulled the curtain back. That's not going to go away now. That's been exposed. There will be other people now who will pick up the banner if he's forced to drop it. Bill Colley with you 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Alan Dershowitz, no friend of any conservative in America, a longtime liberal Democrat who taught at Harvard University, law professor, one of the best legal minds in the country, has an op-ed piece at the Daily News, which is one of the most flaming liberal newspapers out of New York City, which makes it one of the most flaming liberal papers in the country, saying Democrats have overplayed their hand on this one. Said there's no crime. There's no crime here. Well, good. Meanwhile, Dennis Kucinich, speaking of liberals, former mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, and later a member of the House of Representatives, very liberal guy, almost a Bernie Sanders-style socialist. Kucinich was appearing with Sean Hannity. I didn't get to this yesterday. I wanted to get to it. I didn't get a chance. But he ended up defending Trump during an appearance on Hannity's program on the Fox News Channel.
You're saying President Trump is under attack by the deep state intelligence community. Fair statement?
Well, I believe that. Not only that, Sean, but it has to be pointed out in October of 2016, that same deep state overrode the decision of President Obama and Secretary Kerry to come to an agreement with Russia over in a ceasefire in Syria. They overrode it and launched an attack against a Syrian military base. So this is a problem in our country. We've got to protect our nation here. People have to be aware of what's going on. We've got to stand up for America now. This isn't about Democrat, Republican. This is about getting what's going on in the moment and understanding that our country itself is under attack from within.
Yeah, this is the comparison I remember sharing with you yesterday was 7 Days in May. That came from Judge Andrew Napolitano. 7 Days in May was a book and then later a movie with Burt Lancaster and, who was it, Kirk Douglas. And then it was remade in the 1990s with Jason Robards, Sam Waterston, and Forrest. The name will come back to me in just a couple of minutes. But it was a great story. This time around, it's not the military, though, trying to derail Donald Trump. It's the bureaucrats who are sucking us, bleeding us dry, who go into their offices, lock the doors, and sleep all day. I'll never forget reading the story about a woman who got this bureaucratic job in an office somewhere here in the West, and she'd go in and sleep atop her desk all day, and they couldn't fire her. And they get a good-sized paycheck, and they get all of the benefits when they retire, which you pay for. They don't want to lose that. They're not Americans. They're not fighting for us. They're simply fighting for their own selfish interest. And right now, Donald Trump has called them to account. They're like a wounded animal, and they're at their most dangerous. Pete Hoekstra, who was a member of the House of Representatives from Michigan for many, many years, Pete Hoekstra was making an appearance on Fox, and he says the president should be giving as good as he gets and shouldn't step back, just should keep throwing punches.
I think when Donald Trump comes out and he's the voice for the Trump administration, he's doing great. He is clearly, hopefully, setting the tone for Republicans and conservatives in Washington, D.C. that says, we got to fight the liberal media. We got to fight the kind of fake news that came out on Monday from the Washington Post. We got to be fighting for our agenda, because when we are talking about immigration reform, when we are talking about health care reform, and when we are talking about tax reform, we are going to be winning on those issues. These attacks are personal attacks on Donald Trump because the left does not want to talk about the issues, and they see this as being the best way to detract from talking about the issues and talking about the individual President Donald Trump.
I was listening to that. I never met Pete Hoekstra, but I did know his predecessor in the House. He succeeded a fellow by the name of Guy Vanderjagt, who during the 1980s was, a lot of congressmen are not household names. Vanderjagt was the guy who gave a speech, a 47-minute speech off the cuff at the Republican National Convention in 1980, which is considered still one of the best convention speeches ever made. And Vanderjagt was a conservative Republican. He was a minister, and he'd been a TV anchor who got elected to Congress. And he served for many, many years in that role. And then Hoekstra, who was very much a conservative as well, decided to challenge Vanderjagt in a primary, and he ended up winning because Vanderjagt was a large man, and Hoekstra rode a bicycle to various events, so he gave the impression that he was more vigorous and youthful. But in both cases, the voters in that district were well served by those two men. I got to meet Vanderjagt. One of my congressmen, when I was younger, introduced me to him, and I had a chance to meet and have a conversation with him, and he was a super, super guy. Both he and Hoekstra come out of the old Dutch Reformed ethic in that part of Michigan, and they are people who are going to give you the straight dope. 8:55, a couple of minutes left before the break, and then we're talking firearms with Todd Eccles in the next hour. Caller, you're on the air on KLIX.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Colley. Mike Simpson made a statement. I've been getting your program on and off for feeding cattle, and I just happened to miss. Did you address that statement that Representative Mike's statement made? Help me out there.
Was this the health care statement?
No, it was on about Donald Trump and how, the impeachment or how his actions. It was on the news. I don't know whether it was the Boise News, Channel 7. Oh, and by the way, I just canceled my Times News. I just had enough. We just canceled Times News. My wife said, no, don't lecture them. just cancel and walk away.
Well, Simpson, let's be honest. The man is a Democrat who realized he couldn't win as a Democrat in this district, so he registered as a Republican and he got elected as a Republican, and now all of the party regulars are afraid to say anything. Behind the scenes, they'll all tell you that the guy is just a liberal. Uh, I don't know so much about the latest. He's complained about Trump in the past. I do know that he went to an event in Boise the other day, and while he voted for the latest health care bill, he then basically said I was for it before I was against it, and claimed I only voted for it because I knew it wouldn't become law. What an unreliable, double-talking, two-faced. I don't have a lot more to say about him. I've never met him. For a good year and a half to 2 years, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not going to do that any longer.
Well, we appreciate your time and your effort, and thank you, Bill, for that. I just rather frustrated with the mainstream trumping up Trump, and we appreciate people standing with our president.
Hey, thank you, and I want to point out that was unsolicited. I didn't know that he canceled his newspaper subscription. And I wanted to mention as well, there was a great candidate who ran for Simpson's seat last year named Anthony Tompkins, a veteran and all-around great guy. And I hope to see more of Anthony in the future. If we're looking for someone who is going to be a pillar of morality and common sense, a guy like Anthony would be an excellent choice come 2018. 8:58, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Talking guns in the next hour of the show. Hope you don't go away.